And thank you for joining us for this week in Jacksonville Business Edition. I'm Kent Justice, your host. And so we've often, as we focus on economic growth and development, we've talked about the workforce and what companies are doing to grow that. And today we're going to take a different view here. We've got AJ Mizes, the CEO and founder of the Human Reach, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the workforce can do to participate and to be there and to be ready for the companies who are searching. So AJ, thank you so much for making the time for us. Give us just a little bit about your background and maybe tell us what the Human Reach is.
Absolutely. Ken, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. My name is AJ Mizes. I founded a company called the Human Reach. We're based in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and we're all about helping people live their most authentic lives when it comes to their careers and making the most out of it. And so I have a background, almost 20 years working in HR. Most recently, I was a Facebook executive on the HR side of the house, helping to build our augmented reality and virtual reality teams. And lots of experience at companies prior to that. But since we founded the company in 2020, we've helped over 2,000 people, mainly directors, VPs, and above, land their dream job or pivot careers after so long working in one field into another. And we're proud of the work that we've been able to do.
AJ, we're clearly into the second half of the calendar year, but this is really when it seems like if I'm seeking a job, that's where I should be making my moves. What would you advise people at this point in the year?
Well, that's right, Kent. And there's a few reasons why that's a big reason or a big place where you should be looking for a new gig is in Q3 and Q4. One is because we've exited out of the summer vacation, so people are back, kids are in school. Companies are starting to really gear up for not only the end of the year, but also 2025 or the year ahead. And so Q3 is a great place to be. And the average job search takes about 5 to 6 months. So if you think about it, in reverse engineering where you want to be, if you're wanting to be somewhere by the end of the year, now is the best time to make it happen, right? Companies are trying to throw out their offers before the end of the year so that they're fully staffed and ready to go for 2025 so they can hit the ground running with everybody needed to accomplish their goals.
Yeah, and AJ, as I started thinking about this, okay, my own career, when I've gotten a new job, when I've taken that step and got a promotion or moved somewhere else, a couple of times, unusual, I think, a couple of times it was right in December. It was right toward the end of the calendar year. But by and large, it's been more summertime or early fall when some of those things played out. And why is that? Because they've got a different focus once we get to the end of the fourth quarter, or how would you explain that?
Yeah, so we typically see two different big spikes during the year. The first big spike happens right before summer because companies are trying to make sure that they're hitting their goals for the back half of the year, so Q3, Q4. And then the other thing that we're seeing is we see a huge spike in November and December right before Christmas because companies are trying to make sure that they have everybody that they need for the following year
No,
as Q1 rolls
that
around.
sounds familiar. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So those are two really big reasons. And the other piece is, companies also are trying to use their budgets. So not only are they trying to make sure that they have the people that they need, but the big headcount budgets and labor budgets are something that are top of mind as we approach the end of H1 and the start of H1 for the following year. And so that contributes to that big surge that we see too.
So I'm talking to you, and you're that San Francisco area. So we all know for 20 years we've known, oh, this is where technology is born and startup companies and all of that. Certainly Jacksonville and this region is looking at, hey, we want to be involved in tech, and we've got an opportunity here. What would you say are keys for folks who are seeking jobs and maybe what kind of industries are you seeing geographically or in different regions of the country?
So are you talking about like what types of companies are hiring right now in places like Jacksonville?
Sure. If you know about Jacksonville, yes, but I would understand that maybe in different regions of the country, there's a different focus.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, obviously, here in the Bay Area, tech is the predominant industry that hires the most here. So, there's definitely a lot of hiring happening here. But overall, the segments that we're seeing experience huge growth right now is healthcare. So, whether that's actually like the provider side of doctors, nurses, people who work in the medical industry, but also bio sciences, so pharma. And then the other big sector that's starting to take a lot of traction again is fintech, so financial technology. Those three are typically the ones where we're seeing a ton of movement. But I do think, and I'm curious if you're hearing this too, but there's been a huge shift in the way in which venture capitalist firms are investing in companies. And if you were to look back 18 months ago, you would see that VC firms, PE firms, they're investing in companies who are pre-profit, right? They're not in the green yet, but they have a really good product. They have a really good, minimal viable product or MVP, and they're going to market. And what we're seeing right now with this, with the reason why money's so expensive right now, and we have a lot of companies who are folding during this time, it's because they weren't profitable. And so the VC funding shift has changed in terms of looking at companies who are profitable before they'll go Series B, Series C. And so we're starting to also see, I think, a tightening of the purse strings to really focus on investing in companies who are profitable, not only have a great product, but are profitable and are bringing in revenue.
So as a member of the workforce, as a job seeker, should I be trained on some of those companies? Should I be looking at almost like a venture capitalist? Should I be looking for companies that, hey, if I get in there, I've got a bigger opportunity to grow?
Absolutely. I think that's one of maybe the top the top points that you should be looking at when you're looking at changing a company is, yes, what does their financial runway look like? What does the road to profitability look like if they're not profitable? What's the exit strategy of that company? And is the company very clear about what the exit strategy is? Or is there an exit strategy? Are they trying to go public?
Right.
And so asking those questions up front is super important. And the ability for that company to give you that information is going to tell you a lot, like whether or not they hold it close to their chest or if they're going to talk about it with you during the interview process.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Whether that leadership team has that plan, and if they do, if they're willing to share it with you as a prospective employee and being part of the team. And I would imagine that depends on the level on the org chart that you're going to be entering a company at on how much information you might get there. Let's talk a little bit about once you've landed the job. I know this is important to what you were sharing with me. Hey, there's an opportunity for growth, not just because I'm learning at a new company, but maybe I can work on me too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we say is that your first 100 days in a new role, especially in a leadership role, director, VP, CXO, are the most critical part of joining a company. And sometimes we think about like the first 6 months of the first year, but the first 100 days is really what you want to focus on first. You want to focus on a few different things. Number one, you want to focus on listening first before trying to come in with, a machine gun and trying to change a whole bunch of things at one time, right? You want to make sure that you're
That can
listening,
be a
you're gathering.
mistake. That can be a mistake of enthusiasm. Hey, I want to make a difference. But if you're not listening first, that can be a negative, right?
Yeah, because think about it. Everybody on the team, they have a ton of context. They've been there for longer than you have. They've tried maybe different things that you might have in your brain of a new idea that you want to try. And they're like, we've already done this. Here's what happened, blah, 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 blah. So listening is so, so, so important. The second is like collecting kudos and wins in your first 100 days. So what are like little ways that you're able to tweak after 30 days that you can then collect some small wins? And then how are you putting together what your next 100 days are looking like? So how can you go to your boss and say, hey, this is what I've listened and learned over the first 30 days. This is what I think we should do. And then here's what that would look like over the next 100 days. And that way you're aligned not only with your peers, not only with your boss, but you're also aligned with what the company needs to do and why you were brought in to add value given your seniority. So those are our three tips there.
Yeah, and there's also I guess a balance between taking initiative in the new role that you have or at the new company.
Yeah.
And being a good listener, like you talked about.
Absolutely. And I tell the story all the time. I was on a team at Facebook. I was there for 6 years, and we had this gentleman come on to our team. And he was super excited to join the team. I and my peers had been on that team for 3 or 4 years. And he came in and literally on his first day, he was like peering over my shoulder, looking at a presentation that I was giving to a VP. And he was saying, oh, you should change this. And what if you did this? And blah, 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 blah. And I could tell it was coming from a good place. It was well intentioned, but like this dude had no context over what we were doing. And he was starting to rub me and several of my peers the wrong way. And it forever changed his reputation at the company for how he interacted that day. And it was just a rough onboarding for him.
You need some business place mouthwash because that leaves a bad taste, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
First thing out of the gate.
Yeah. No go.
Well, one of the other things that I figured we would talk about is just this task that we head out on when we say, okay, it's time for me to move on, or I'm going to explore what the market has to offer for my skill set. I think part of what your company does also is some career coaching. Is that right? And
That's
what
right.
are things to look for, whether I'm coming to the human reach or looking broader?
Yeah, regardless of who you partner up with as a coach, I think there's a few things that I've done when I've looked for a coach and that we recommend others do, which is one, you want to make sure that the person has experience working with folks in your at your level. So, director, VP above, or if you're, below that level, you want to make sure they specialize there. The second is that they've been doing it for a while. And that they understand a little bit about how the current market is working vis-a-vis, markets 18, 24 months ago. And the third thing I would say is like, look at their stories and their testimonials and results. So it's one thing, I think, for people to exit out of a program and successfully complete it and, feel warm and fuzzy inside and have had a great experience. But it's another thing to feel that plus actually have results. And so I think the results are important as well.
AJ Mizes, why is your company succeeding? Why is this something that people are saying, hey, there's value there. I'm going to go with them.
Yeah. So, when I was looking at the market, understanding what was missing or what the gap was in career coaching, typically you have coaches who are great at like helping people find direction or helping people with their resume and cover letter, or helping them with interviewing. And with my, 20 years of experience in HR, I realized that is so disjointed if you have these different coaches who are focusing on three separate things.
Right.
So we brought all of that together because everything is tied to each other, right? The way that you represent yourself on paper needs to be how you talk about yourself. Your direction needs to be figured out first before you can figure out how to talk about yourself on paper and in an interview. And so we've nailed the way in which not only do we, give people confidence and helping them understand their why and what they want to do, but we pair that with consulting. So the step-by-step ways in which you can get into companies of your choice without having to apply online, which is pretty rare in the coaching space. The coaching space tends to be a little bit nebulous. And so we've married the warm, fuzzy, motivational mindset stuff with the tactical execution piece that helps people get jobs very quickly.
I'm curious about this. I'm absolutely aware of there are differences generationally with how we as workers, we as employees, what kind of things we bring, the attitudes we bring to the workplace. What's the generation, what's the age group that is most likely to approach you or to say, hey, I'm at that level. I want some career coaching. I need the help that you can provide.
Yeah, so we primarily focus, like I mentioned, directors, VPs, and above. And so typically people are in their like late 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
And we've even worked with people in their 60s. So we work primarily with those age groups. I would say the biggest, though, being probably the 40s and 50s.
Yeah. What about this younger generation? Obviously, there's some hard chargers who are in their 20s. You can see the future for them. You can see, oh, this person's got skills and they just need seasoning or experience or those sorts of things. Are they likely to seek out a coach? Are they likely to say, yeah, I could use some feedback here from an expert?
Yeah, you know what? I think there's just been this really interesting shift, and maybe you've seen it, Kent, too, which is, a lot of younger people aren't going to college, right? And so they're learning stuff online. They're learning stuff through YouTube, or they're taking supplemental courses just on their area of focus or like what they love doing. And so therefore, it's a little bit of a different mindset. Maybe, for when we were growing up, I went to college, right? I had a kind of a degree that I went for. I pursued then, that career path, but then I kind of meandered after that. And so I think, yes, definitely people who are graduating or younger folks can absolutely benefit from coaches, but it's a little bit different. And so the advice that I give to folks who are maybe in your 20s or early 30s, this is the time to collect experiences and just try things. And so even if you have like just an inkling of an interest in something, go try it. Go see if you can spend, a year or so doing that thing, because it's going to tell you one of two things. One, you love it and you want to do more of it. Or two, I didn't like it at all.
Right.
And actually, I want to make a pivot, right? But you have that experience. And I'll tell you, I started my career in sales, right? Not even in HR. And I still use those skills in my day-to-day job.
Right.
Whether I'm coaching my sales team or I'm, working on a marketing plan with somebody, those sales things that I learned when I was 21, 22 are still coming and bearing fruit now. So experiences is what it's all about.
Well, and inside the workplace, we see the benefits of cross training because, hey, even if that's not going to be my main focus, if I understand how my colleague, what they have to go through or what is really important to them, it can help me be a better team player, a better leader, a better executive, whatever that is, just by understanding and having those experiences across the spectrum.
Yes, I completely agree. And I don't know if you saw the study, but the American Psychological Society actually ran a study like 2 decades ago, and they were looking at what brings people fulfillment. Like, what are you doing day to day that brings you the most fulfillment, makes you the most happy in the work that you do? And what they found was that if you are doing 70% of the time, if you're doing stuff that you love, you are 10 times more likely to be fulfilled in your job. So then that begs the question, what is the 30%? Well, the 30% is just the stuff that comes with our job that we have
Right.
to do, right? So
Right.
like
Yes.
financial reports for me, right? Accounting, right? Not my forte, but I have to do it as a business owner.
Right.
But am I doing stuff 70% of the time that I love doing? Absolutely, sometimes more than that. So
And
I encourage you to use
and
that frame
that
too.
unfortunately is the downfall in a lot of cases for small businesses, because a small business owner, the entrepreneur says, I love this thing over here. I don't really want to do that thing over there, and it has to be done anyway.
Yes, exactly. And eventually you can bring people around you who love to do that 30%. So you're not doing it all the time. And that's, where I am now, where we have folks who are doing that. But I still have to have, a little bit of subject matter expertise in that stuff to be able to coach and guide anyway. So,
And lead there appropriately.
yeah.
Tell you what, AJ Mize is the CEO and founder of the Human Reach. Really appreciate just getting to talk through what this looks like for workers, for the workforce, for employees, and ways that we can move forward. Appreciate your time today.
Ken, thanks so much for having me.
All right, and thank you for watching This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition.